Okay, now your homework this week is a bunch of problems that require you to solve quadratic functions using, in some cases, using the quadratic formula, in some cases, using completing the square. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of these things from your homework assignment. Okay, so first we're going to start with number 6. And number 6 says that 4x squared plus 8x minus 77 is equal to 0. And it says that you need to solve the equation with the quadratic formula. Okay, the quadratic formula states that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and just a friendly reminder, okay, the standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So we know, in this case, lightning yellow, we know that a is equal to 4 because that is the coefficient, okay, of x squared. We know that b is equal to 8 because that is the coefficient of x. And we know that c is equal to negative 77 because that is the constant in this case. I don't know if they intentionally meant to put c for constant, but they sure did, and that's great. So what we now can do is we can say that x is equal to negative, so b is 8, right? So we can put negative 8 plus or minus, okay, the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times, now a is 4, remember, 4, and c is negative 77, times negative 77, okay, all over 2 times a, and in this case, remember, a equals 4, so 2 times 4, okay. All right, so we keep the negative 8, we keep the plus or minus, we keep the giant square root sign. 8 squared is going to be 64, okay. Negative 4 times 4 is 16, okay, and then, well, negative 16, and then negative 16 times negative 77 is, wait a minute, I wrote it down, I did my calculator, I'm going to have to use my calculator again, so, okay, so, negative 16 times negative 77 is equal to 1,232. So, and we get to put this as a plus because it was a minus before, but that minus canceled with this other minus, and we got to put plus 1,232, which is really awesome because then that means that we don't have to get into any imaginary numbers, all over 8. Okay, great. Okay, so then we get to say that x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus the square root of, and then we just do this. Looks like 1,296. That's my, yes, and that's what my calculator says too. Good for me. 1,296. Square root of 1,296 all over 8. My calculator has now told me that the square root of 1,296 is in fact 36. So negative 8 plus or minus 36 over 8. Okay, now, at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to separate this out into two things. Because this 8 can cancel with this 8, I'm going to separate this into negative 8 over 8 plus or minus, okay, 36 over 8. And I can do that because that is one of the natures of fractions. If you have something on the bottom, just one little thing on the bottom, right, and then it's under both of these things that are separated by a plus or a minus, in this case it's plus or minus, then you can separate it into these two things. And the cool thing about this is I know that negative 8 over 8 is just negative 1. So I know that x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus, and then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and reduce this fraction to its simplest form, okay? So 36 and 8, I think they both divide by 4, right? 4 times something is 36. I think 4 times 9 is 36. So I'm going to divide the top by 4. I'm going to divide the bottom by 4, and I'm going to get 9 over 2. Okay, and they don't have any common factors, so that's about it. Okay, 1 plus or minus 9 over 2, which is the same as negative 2 over 2 plus or minus 9 over 2, because negative 1 is the same as negative 2 over 2. I just have to put the common denominator there. So that gives me two things, right? X is equal to negative 2 over 2 plus 9 over 2, which is going to give me 9 minus 2 is 7 halves, okay? Okay, and it's going to give me the second one, which is negative 2 over 2 minus 9 over 2, which is the same as negative 11 over 2. So my answer is that x is equal to, and I just put this in order from least to greatest, negative 11 over 2 and 7 over 2, okay? The brackets help me see that it is not going to be like a coordinate pair that is going to be an actual two solutions, a set that is showing two solutions for x. Okay, so that is using the quadratic formula. Now let's take a look at using completing the square. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to go with number 9. Okay, number 9 from your homework says that we're going to take x squared plus 12x minus 45 equals 0 and solve it by completing the square. Now, what does completing the square mean? Well, completing the square means you have to know before you can complete a square what a perfect square trinomial is. Now, a perfect square trinomial is a trinomial that you derive from taking a binomial and squaring it. Okay? And we have this little formula called a special product formula that says when you have a plus b squared, that's equal to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay? Whoops, let me get rid of that last little thing that I wrote. Okay, so if I'm going to, so in this case, the x is the a and the 2 is the b. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this is equal to x squared plus 2 times a times b. Okay, so a times b is 2x, right? Because x times 2 is the same as 2 times x, which is 2x, right? And I'm going to do 2 times a times b. So that's going to be x squared plus 4x, okay? And then b will be squared, this will be squared, and that'll be x squared plus 4x plus 4, okay? Don't take my word for it. Work it out. Let me pick another color. Okay, so if I've got x plus 2 and I'm squaring it, I can do x plus 2 times x plus 2 because I'm squaring something, so I'm multiplying it times itself, and then I'm going to FOIL it. I'm going to take this x and I'm going to multiply it times that, and that, then this and times that, and that times that, FOIL, blah, blah, blah. So this is going to be x times x, which is x squared, x times positive 2, so plus 2x, plus 2 times x, which will be another plus 2x, okay? And then plus 2 times 2, which will be plus 4. Well, these combine because they're like terms, and I'm going to get x squared plus 4x plus 4. It works. Math works. It does. Okay, so going back to here, what I do with completing the square is I take my first two terms and I say, I want to make these so that they somehow become a perfect square binomial, you know, like a perfect square trinomial, right? So I've got to end up with knowing that I've got an a squared, which is that, right? So the x is no problem. And then I've got 2 times a times b. So it's going to be 2 times some number times x. Well, I'm going to divide 12 by 2, and I'm going to find out that that number is 6. Okay? So if I want to complete the square, I've got to keep my x squared, I've got to keep my 12x, and then I've got to add to it, remember what that number was? 6. I'm going to square the 6. Okay? Which means 36. Okay? I've got to keep the minus 45, But now instead of this 0 over here, I added a 36 onto this side of my equation. That means I got to add a 36 onto this side of my equation. Otherwise, I will have changed the equation, and I don't want to do that. So what happens when I add 36 to 0? Hey, that's pretty good. All right, good. So I added 36 to both sides. Totally fair. I can do that because I put it on both sides, right? But the cool thing about this is now I know that since this is in the form of a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, this is going to become x plus 6 squared, right? So I've got x plus 6 squared minus 45 is equal to 36. Now, what I'm going to do, the whole reason I do this is I want to make this, I want to isolate this on one side so I can take the square root of it and get to my answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate it. And I'm going to isolate it using lightning yellow. So I want to get rid of this negative 45. So I'll add 45 to get rid of that. And then I'm going to add 45 on this side because that's basic pre-algebra. Yep. All right. And then I'm going to get x plus 6 squared all by itself on this side. 36 plus 45 is 81, which is awesome because I can take that square root of 81. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides because that's how I'm going to get rid of this guy right there, right? I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and this is going to end up being plus or minus the square root because I generally get two answers when I solve a quadratic. So the square root of x plus 6 squared is just x plus 6. So x plus 6 is equal to plus or minus, and the square root of 81 is 9. This gives me two equations to solve now. X plus 6 equals 9. X plus 6 equals negative 9. Subtract 6 from both sides, and x equals 3. Subtract 6 from both sides, and x equals negative 15. So my x is going to be two answers, negative 15 and 3. All right, enjoy the rest of your homework.